The Hookit was a cold night in a quiet village. The wind moved through the trees, carrying the sound of dry leaves. Most people were asleep, their homes dark and silent. Only the forest seemed awake, whispering strange secrets in the night. David, a middle-aged man, walked back from the fields. He lived alone on the edge of the village. Life had not been kind to him. His wife had died many years ago and he never had children. People often said he was quiet, too quiet, but he never cared. He worked in the day, sat by his small fire at night, and that was his life. But this night something unusual happened. As he passed the forest, he heard a sound. At first he thought it was an injured animal. It was soft, almost like a cry. He stopped, listening carefully. Again the sound came. Not an animal. A child. David's heart raced. What child would be in the forest at night? He pushed through the trees, following the sound. The moonlight slipped through the branches, showing him the way. Then he saw them. Two small figures huddled together on the ground, shivering. They were twins, a boy and a girl. Their clothes were torn and they looked weak, almost starving. Their skin had a faint glow under the moonlight, and their eyes, bright silver, not human at all. David froze. He had never seen anything like this. For a moment, fear told him to step back. But then the girl opened her eyes wider and he saw something else. Fear, pain, and helplessness. They were children. No matter what they looked like, they were just children. He knelt beside them. "Are you lost?" he asked softly. The boy tried to speak but only coughed. His voice was strange, like an echo of two tones at once. The girl clutched her brother tightly, too weak to answer. David looked around. The forest was empty, but he felt something strange in the air. A low hum, like distant thunder, but not from the sky. The ground seemed to shake very lightly. He knew danger was close. He did not think anymore. He picked up the boy in one arm and the girl in the other. They were light, far too light for children their age. Without a word, he carried them back to his small wooden house at the edge of the village. Inside, he laid them on his bed, covered them with blankets, and gave them water. They drank slowly, like they had not touched water in days. When they finally slept, David sat near the fire, staring at them. Who were they? Why were their eyes glowing? Why were they here? As he thought, the sound returned. That low hum outside, far away in the sky. David stepped out and looked up. His heart skipped a beat. Above the forest, moving like shadows against the stars, were shapes. Not birds, not planes, silent ships sliding through the night sky. They searched, lights cutting through the clouds like blades. David quickly stepped back inside. He shut the door, his breath heavy. Whoever those ships belonged to, they were looking for the twins. The firelight flickered across the children's faces. In their sleep, they whispered in a language David did not know. The words carried a strange rhythm, almost like music. He sat there all night, guarding them. His mind wanted answers, but his heart already knew one thing. He could not give them away. Whatever they were, they needed him. Morning came. The village began to wake up, roosters calling, dogs barking. David made a simple soup and fed the children. They ate quietly, still weak. The boy finally spoke in broken words. "Thank you." The voice was strange, echoing like two people speaking together. David nodded. "You are safe now," he said. But deep inside he knew safety was only temporary. The ships would return. The children were not normal. They were hiding from something powerful, something that could come back at any time. David looked at them again. Two small children far from home, lost and scared. His heart tightened. He had once lived in silence, but now his life had changed forever. And in that small wooden house on that quiet morning, no one knew the truth. These were not poor orphans. These were not cursed children. They were something far greater, something the universe itself wanted. But for now, in the eyes of one lonely Earthling, they were simply his children. The forest remained silent, but the sky above still carried that shadow. The hunt was not over. Life on Earth the days after that night were not easy. David kept the twins hidden inside his small wooden house. He knew the villagers were curious. People in the village talked about lights in the sky and strange noises in the forest. Some even said they saw shadows moving above the clouds. But no one suspected David. He had always lived alone, and people rarely visited his home. Inside, the twins slowly began to recover. They were thin and weak when David found them, but after a few days of warm food and rest, color returned to their faces. They still looked different from human children. Their silver eyes caught the firelight like mirrors, and when they spoke, their voices carried that strange double echo. But David no longer felt afraid. He felt something he had not felt in years: responsibility and, strangely, love. The twins did not speak much at first. They only knew a few broken words of English. The boy, slightly older, learned faster. His name, as he tried to say it, sounded like Kale. The girl's name was softer, like Lyra. David gave them simple chores to make them feel at home. Kale helped with firewood, though the axe always broke or bent in his hands. Lyra tried to help with cooking, but whenever she touched food, strange sparks of light sometimes danced above the pot. David noticed these things but said nothing. He did not want them to feel ashamed. At night, when the twins slept, David often sat by the fire thinking. He remembered the ships in the sky. He remembered the hum that shook the ground. These children were not normal. But if the universe wanted to take them back, it would have to go through him first. One evening, as the sun fell behind the hills, David took the twins to the edge of the fields. He wanted them to see something peaceful, something human. Fireflies began to rise from the grass, glowing in the dark. Lyra gasped and clapped her hands, her silver eyes wide with joy. Kale reached out, and the fireflies did not run from him. They landed on his hands and shoulders as if he called them. David watched with quiet amazement. Nature seemed to obey them. Birds followed Kale when he walked near the forest. Stray dogs in the village wagged their tails and sat at his feet. And Lyra, sometimes when she cried, the rain would fall. Even on days the sky was clear. It was clear they were not ordinary children. But they laughed like children. They smiled like children. And David's lonely house, once silent and empty, was now full of life. Still, the villagers began to notice. Old women whispered when they saw David buying extra bread in the market. Children said they heard laughter near his house, though he lived alone. Some even claimed they saw silver light glowing from his windows at night. Rumors spread quickly. Some said David had adopted orphans. Others said he was keeping cursed children. One man swore he saw Kale's eyes shine like a lantern in the dark. David ignored the whispers, but he could not ignore the fear in the air. He had lived in this village his whole life. He knew what fear could do. Fear could turn neighbors into enemies. One night the twins asked him something unexpected. "Why are we different?" Kale asked, staring into the fire. His voice carried sadness. David hesitated. He wanted to protect them, but he could not lie forever. "You are different," he said slowly. "But that does not make you less. Sometimes the world is cruel to those who are not the same. But in this house you are safe." Lyra leaned against his arm. "Safe. With you," she whispered. For the first time in years, David felt tears in his eyes. But safety was fragile. That same night, as the twins slept, David heard it again. The low hum in the distance. He stepped outside, looking at the sky. A red light moved slowly above the forest. Not like a plane, not like anything from Earth. He knew they were searching again. Searching for the twins. The next morning he warned Kale and Lyra. "You must never go too far from this house," he said firmly. "The world outside may not understand you, and some may wish to harm you." The twins nodded, but David saw the questions in their eyes. He could not answer them all. He himself did not understand who they truly were. As days passed, strange things kept happening. Once, a broken cart in the village began moving again after Kale touched it. Another time, when a wolf came near the fields, Lyra raised her hand and the animal simply walked away without growling. The villagers grew restless. They called it witchcraft. Some said David had sold his soul to keep the children alive. The whispers grew louder, turning into anger. One evening, a group of men came to David's door. They carried sticks and axes. "We know you're hiding something," one of them said. "Those children are not normal. They will bring trouble to all of us." David stood tall. "They are only children," he said firmly. But deep in his heart, he knew the men were right about one thing. Trouble was coming. Not from the village, but from the stars. That night, as Kale and Lyra slept peacefully, David sat awake, staring at the sky. The ships would return, and when they did, the real fight for the twins' future would begin. The hidden truth. The village was quiet again, but David could feel the storm coming. The whispers had not stopped. Some neighbors avoided him. Some gave him cold looks when he walked through the market. Only a few still greeted him kindly. He did not care much about what they thought. But he worried about Kyle and Lyra. They were growing fast and their strange powers were getting harder to hide. One evening, David took them to the edge of the river. The air was calm and the water reflected the silver moon. He wanted them to enjoy the peaceful night. Kyle skipped stones across the surface. Each time his hand moved, the stone glowed faintly before touching the water, leaving a line of light as it bounced. Lyra laughed and tried too, but when she threw her stone, the water rippled unnaturally, spreading in perfect circles of light. David felt both pride and fear. Their abilities were beautiful, but if anyone saw them, trouble would come faster than he could stop it. That was when a voice broke the silence. "Strange children you have there." David turned quickly. A man stood behind them, leaning on a wooden staff. He wore a traveler's cloak, dusty from the road. His face was hidden under a hood, but his voice was calm and steady. "Who are you?" David asked, stepping forward. His body tensed. "Just a wanderer," the man said. He lifted his head slightly. His eyes glowed faintly blue, almost like the twins. "I have seen many worlds, and I know when I see royal blood." David froze. Kale and Lyra looked at each other confused. "Royal in blood?" David repeated. The man nodded slowly. "They are not orphans. They are not cursed. They are the last heirs of a powerful house. Their family ruled far beyond your skies. Many seek them. Some wish to protect them, but most wish to destroy them." The words hit David like a hammer. He shook his head. "They are only children." The man stepped closer. "Children, yes, but not ordinary ones. Their people were betrayed, their kingdom destroyed. Only these two escaped. If they are found, those who hunt them will not show mercy. You must decide, Earthling. Will you hide them, or will you prepare them for the truth?" Kyle stepped forward. "What truth?" His silver eyes shone with a mix of fear and courage. The traveler looked at him with pity. "That you and your sister are not lost, you are chosen. One day you must return to claim what was stolen." Lyra's hand shook. "Claim? We don't understand." The man sighed. "You will. In time. But until then, trust no one. Not even your own people. They will not see you as heirs. They will see you as danger." Before David could ask more, the traveler turned. He walked back into the trees, his cloak blending with the darkness. In moments, he was gone, leaving only silence behind. The twins stood close to David, their faces pale. Kyle clenched his fists. "Is it true? Are we not human?" David put a hand on his shoulder. His voice was firm but gentle. "You are my children. That is all that matters now." But inside, his heart was heavy. He had always known they were different. Now the truth carried weight he did not want. Royal heirs, a kingdom beyond the stars, enemies hunting them. That night, Kale could not sleep. He sat by the window watching the sky. Lyra joined him, resting her head on his shoulder. "Do you think he was right?" she whispered. Kale's voice was low. "I don't know. But if we are royal, why were we left here? Why didn't anyone protect us?" Neither had an answer. Only the stars looked back at them, silent and endless. Days passed, but the memory of the traveler haunted David. He noticed the twins changing. Kale grew stronger. He could lift heavy logs with little effort. Lyra's gift grew stranger. Sometimes her emotions shaped the world around her. When she was happy, flowers bloomed quickly in the garden. When she was sad, the air grew heavy with rain. The villagers noticed too. Fear grew. A group of elders whispered about sending someone to investigate David's home. He heard the talk, but kept his face calm. Inside, he was preparing. He sharpened. Old tools reinforced his door and kept watch at night. Then one evening, it happened. Kale and Lyra were helping David with firewood when a shadow moved across the sky. Not a bird, not a cloud. A ship. Silent, dark, but massive. Its shape blocked the stars. The twins froze, their silver eyes wide with recognition. They could feel it. Whoever was inside that ship was searching for them. David pulled them close. Inside. Now. They ran back to the house, hearts pounding. The ground shook with a faint vibration, just like before. Lights swept across the forest, searching. Cale looked at his sister, fear and anger burning in his young face. They're here again. They won't stop until they find us. David locked the door, his jaw tight. Then they'll have to go through me first. Lyra whispered softly, almost in tears. But if he was right, if we are royal, then they won't just come once. They'll keep coming. David said nothing. He only stared at the flames in the fireplace, his hand gripping the handle of his axe. The truth had been revealed, and it was heavier than any secret before. The twins were not just different. They were the heirs of a fallen kingdom, and the galaxy had not forgotten them. The enemy appears. The next days were tense. The memory of the great ship hanging in the sky haunted David and the twins. Even when it was gone, the feeling of being watched never left. Cale often looked toward the forest, his fists clenched, while Lyra kept close to David, afraid to even step outside alone. But the villagers were not blind. They had seen the strange light in the sky. Some said it was a storm. Others swore it was a demon's sign. A few whispered the truth out of fear, that David's house was cursed. Suspicion grew. And into this fear strangers arrived. They came one morning, riding into the village with carts and horses. At first they looked like simple travelers. Men and women dressed in plain clothes, speaking kindly to the villagers, offering goods to trade. But their eyes told another story. Sharp, watchful, too calculating for simple merchants. David noticed them at once. He had lived long enough to know when danger walked among men. These strangers asked too many questions. They asked about children, about lights in the sky, about unusual things. And the villagers, hungry for answers, told them everything. That night, David gathered Kyle and Lyra. "You must be careful," he said. His voice was low but firm. "These people are not who they pretend to be. They are hunters. They have come for you." Lyra's silver eyes filled with fear. "What will they do if they find us?" David did not answer. He could not bring himself to say the truth. The days that followed were worse. The strangers spread through the village, watching every home, every road. At night, David saw their shadows moving near his fields. They were searching, and he knew it was only a matter of time before they came to his door. Cale grew restless. His powers were awakening more each day. Once, when he became angry at seeing the hunters near the fields, a surge of light burst from his hands and burned a tree trunk in half. David scolded him harshly. "You must not show them what you can do. That is what they want. If they see your power, they will never leave us alone." Kyle lowered his head ashamed, but deep inside he felt the fire of defiance. One night the danger became real. David woke to the sound of footsteps outside his house. Slow, deliberate, surrounding the walls. He reached for his axe and quietly told the twins, "Hide. Do not come out unless I call." Kyle wanted to argue, but the look in David's eyes stopped him. He pulled Lyra into the small hiding space under the floorboards, covering her mouth as she trembled. The door creaked. A knock came, too soft to be friendly. David gripped the axe. "Who's there?" A voice answered, calm and smooth. "A friend. We are travelers, seeking shelter." David's jaw tightened. "This is no inn. Move along." The voice grew sharper. "We know what you keep here, Earthling. Hand them over and we may let you live." The door burst open. 3 figures stepped inside, their human faces flickering for a moment before the illusion broke. Their skin shimmered like metal. Their eyes burned with a dull red glow and their movements were unnaturally fast. These were not men. They were hunters, aliens disguised in human form. David swung his axe, striking one across the chest. Sparks flew instead of blood. The creature hissed, its face twisting into something monstrous. Kyle and Lyra heard the noise from their hiding place. Lyra gripped her brother's hand, whispering, "We can't just let him fight alone." But Cale was already moving. Rage burned in him. He kicked open the boards and leapt into the room. His silver eyes glowed bright as fire. "Leave him alone," he shouted. A pulse of energy erupted from his hands, knocking one hunter against the wall with a crash. David stared in shock, but there was no time for questions. The other hunters lunged forward. Lyra stepped out too, her small body trembling, but when her voice rang out, the air itself shifted. "Stop!" she cried, and suddenly the room filled with a wave of force. The hunters froze for a moment as if bound by invisible chains. David swung again, his axe splitting through one of them. The creature fell in a burst of sparks and ash. The others hissed, their red eyes burning brighter. The fight raged. Kyle threw blasts of light. Lyra's voice shook the walls, and David fought with the courage of a man who had nothing left to lose. At last, the hunters staggered back. One snarled, "This is not over, heirs of the throne. Others will come, stronger than us." With that, they vanished into a shimmer of light, disappearing into the night. The house was silent again, broken wood and scorched walls the only proof of what had happened. David dropped his axe, his breath heavy. He turned to the twins, who stood pale and shaking. You fought them," he said, still trying to believe what he had seen. Cale lowered his head. "I couldn't just hide while you risked your life." Lyra's eyes were wet with tears. "They called us heirs. What does it mean?" David looked at them both, his heart torn between pride and fear. "It means the world is bigger and more dangerous than I ever imagined. And it means they won't stop until they have you." The fire burned low in the hearth, casting shadows on the walls. For the first time, David realized this was no longer just about protecting two children. This was a war he had been pulled into. A war between worlds. And the enemy had finally appeared. Revelation of power. The house smelled of smoke and broken wood. The fight with the hunters had left deep scars on David's home. A wall was cracked, the floor splintered, and the air was heavy with the memory of sparks and fire. David tried to fix what he could, but his hands trembled. Not from fear, he was used to danger, but from the truth he could no longer deny. The children he had raised were not just different. They were powerful. Cale and Lyra sat silently by the hearth, their faces pale. They had never used their gifts in front of David like this before. The glow of Cale's hand still lingered in his memory. The force of Lyra's voice still echoed in his bones. David finally broke the silence. "You both need to tell me what else you can do." Kyle looked down at his hands. "I don't know. Sometimes when I feel angry, light comes out. It burns, it pushes. I can't control it." Lyra hugged her knees, whispering, "When I speak, the world listens. But I don't mean it to. It just happens." David studied them, his face stern but not unkind. "Then you must learn to control it. Power like that, uncontrolled, will bring more hunters. We barely survived this time. Next time it will be worse." The twins exchanged nervous glances. They were children, but no longer innocent. The battle had changed them. The next morning, David began training them. He was no teacher of alien powers, but he knew discipline, patience, and survival. Cale chopped wood with his glowing strength, learning to hold back so he did not split the axe itself. Lyra practiced speaking softly, testing how much her words bent the world around her. Sometimes flowers opened at her command. Sometimes the wind shifted at a whisper. It was slow and tiring work. Some days ended in frustration. Cale once lost control and blasted a tree into ashes. Lyra once wept when her cry brought a storm that flooded the field. But David stayed with them, guiding them with the steady hand of a father. "You cannot fear your gift," he told them. "Fear makes it wild. You must respect it, shape it, and use it only when you must." But even as they trained, the weight of their secret pressed down heavier. At night, Kyle dreamed of fire and stars. He saw shadows chasing him, ships burning, a throne of light standing empty. Lyra dreamed of a woman's voice calling her name, a soft melody she did not understand. They woke often in tears, clinging to each other. One evening, when the training was done, David sat with them by the fire. His voice was low. "Do you know why the hunters called you heirs?" Cale shook his head. "They said we belonged to a throne. But I don't understand, David sighed. I don't know either. But I think your powers are part of that truth. Whoever your family was, they were not ordinary, and that means you cannot run from who you are forever. The children were silent. The fire crackled, throwing long shadows on the walls, but the universe was not silent. 2 nights later, more ships passed over the forest. This time they were larger. Their searchlights cut through the sky, sweeping across the fields. David woke the children quickly. Stay inside. Do not show yourselves. Cale's fists burned with light. We can fight them again. No, David snapped. Not unless you must. Every time you use your power, they learn more about you. That is what they want. The ships did not land, but their presence sent a message. The hunt was not over. The next morning, David took the twins deeper into the forest. He wanted them to practice where no villagers could see. There, Kyle tried to focus his blasts into short bursts instead of wild explosions. Lyra tried to bend her voice into whispers that only affected small things like a leaf or a bird. But it was not only power they were learning. It was responsibility. Once, when Kale grew impatient and fired a blast at a fallen tree, David grabbed his arm. Do not fight like a child. Fight like someone who protects. If you only think of destroying, you will become the same as those who hunt you. The words struck Kale hard. He wanted to be strong, but he did not want to be like the hunters. Lyra, too, learned control. Her soft words calmed wild animals that crossed their path. A wolf that once bared its teeth now lowered its head and walked away at her command. She smiled weakly. It listens to me, David nodded. Then speak with care. Your voice is not just yours. It belongs to everything around you. The twins began to understand. Their powers were not curses. They were gifts, dangerous, yes, but also a chance to protect. Yet with each passing day, their bond with David grew stronger. He was not their real father, but in their hearts he had become the only father they knew. And he, once a lonely man, now felt the weight of love greater than he had ever carried. But love could not stop what was coming. One night, as they sat quietly by the fire, a sharp knock came at the door. David froze. His axe was by his side, but his hand did not move. The twins looked at him, fear in their eyes. Stay behind me, David whispered. The knock came again, harder this time. A voice followed. Not human, not even pretending. Heirs of the throne, it said coldly. Come out. Your time of hiding is over. Kyle's hands glowed in the darkness. Lyra's breath shook. David's grip tightened on the axe. The revelation of their power had only begun. And now, their enemies knew exactly where to find them. Choice between two worlds. The knock on the door echoed long after the voice faded. David stood frozen, his hand tight on the axe handle, his heart pounding like a drum. Kale's fists glowed faintly, light flickering between his fingers. Lyra pressed against her brother, her silver eyes wide with fear. But then silence. Whoever was outside did not break in. No sound of footsteps leaving. Just silence, heavy and watchful. David waited for what felt like hours before finally moving. They know where we are now, he said. His voice was low, filled with a weight that pressed down on all three of them. The twins said nothing. But deep inside, they knew the truth. Hiding forever was impossible. The next morning, the village woke uneasy. Some people claimed they saw lights moving in the night sky again. Others said they heard strange voices echoing from the hills. David kept the children inside. But whispers spread faster than fire in dry grass. By noon, another stranger came to the village. Not a hunter, but someone different. He wore long robes of silver gray and his eyes glowed like Kale and Lyra's. The villagers, frightened, kept their distance. But the man went straight to David's home, his steps calm, his gaze firm. When David opened the door, the man bowed slightly. I am Sereth, he said, a guardian of the lost throne. I have searched many years for the heirs, and now I have found them. Kyle and Lyra stood behind David, uncertain. Sereth looked at them with something like reverence. Your Highnesses, he whispered, lowering his head. Your people wait for you. Your kingdom calls. The words fell heavy in the room. David stepped forward, his voice sharp. They are children. They belong here. Sereth shook his head. They do not belong here. Their blood carries the legacy of kings and queens. They must return, or their people will remain in chains. Kale's fists clenched. Return where? We don't even know who we are. Sereth's voice softened. You are the last of your line. Your parents were rulers of our world. They were betrayed, their throne stolen, their people enslaved. You were hidden on this planet far from the war to keep you alive. But hiding is over. If you stay here, the hunters will never stop. If you return, you can fight for what is yours." Lyra shook her head, tears in her eyes. "But this is our home. David is our family." Sareth looked at David with respect. "You gave them shelter when no one else would. For that you have my gratitude. But you cannot protect them forever. The enemy grows stronger. Your weapons, your courage, it will not be enough when the armies arrive." David's jaw tightened. He wanted to argue, to fight against Sareth's words, but deep down he knew they were true. His axe, his walls, his will, none of it could stop ships that blotted out the sky. The twins stood silent, caught between two worlds. That night they sat outside watching the stars. Kyle's voice was heavy. "If we go with him, we'll never come back. If we stay, we put David in danger." Lyra leaned against him. "I don't want to leave. He saved us. He made us family." Kale clenched his fists, the glow sparking faintly. "But maybe he's right. Maybe this isn't just about us. If we are heirs, if we really have a people, don't we owe them something?" David stepped out quietly, hearing their words. He sat beside them, his face tired but kind. "Listen to me. You are my children, no matter where you came from. But you are also more than that. If what this Sareth says is true, then your lives belong to more than this little village. They belong to a whole world waiting for you." Lyra's eyes filled with tears. "But what about you? If we go, you'll be alone again." David swallowed hard. He had thought the same thing 100 times. But he forced a small smile. "I was alone before you came. If I must be alone again, I will endure it. What matters is that you live and that you choose what is right." The words broke something inside Kale. He turned away, wiping his eyes. Lyra clung to David, her small hands shaking. The choice hung heavy over the days that followed. Sareth remained in the village, quiet and patient. He never forced them, but his presence reminded them of the path ahead. The hunters did not attack again, but David knew they were watching, waiting, testing. Kale began to dream again. Visions of battlefields under alien skies, voices calling his name. Lyra felt the pull too, a song in her mind that grew louder each night. The call of their people. Finally, one evening, Kale stood and spoke with a voice that trembled but did not break. "We cannot stay. If we stay, David dies. If we go, maybe we save him. Maybe we save more." Lyra shook her head, tears streaming, but she knew he was right. Their lives were no longer only their own. David looked at them, his chest heavy with pride and sorrow. "Then if you must go, go with courage. But remember, you are not only heirs of a throne, you are my children. Carry both truths with you." The stars burned brightly above, cold and endless. The twins looked at each other, their hands tight together. The choice was made. They would leave the only home they had ever known. Human spirit, alien destiny. The night of departure came quickly. Sareth's ship, hidden deep in the forest, hummed with quiet power. Its silver surface shimmered in the moonlight, unlike anything the villagers could imagine. Kale and Lyra stood before it, their hands gripping each other tightly. David stood a few steps behind, his axe strapped to his back, though he knew it was useless against what was coming. The twins had chosen to leave, but their hearts were heavy. This was the only home they had ever known, and David was the only father they remembered. Sareth's voice was calm. "We must move now. The hunters are gathering. They will not let us leave without a fight." David's eyes narrowed. "Then we'll fight." Kale looked at him with worry. "You don't have to." "Yes, I do," David interrupted. His voice carried the strength of a man who had lost much but refused to lose again. "I protected you when you were weak. Now that you're strong, we fight together." Before more could be said, the forest shook. A deep hum filled the air, and then the sky erupted with red light. Dozens of ships broke through the clouds, their shapes like sharp blades against the stars. The hunters had come in force. Sareth drew a glowing staff from his cloak. "So be it. The battle begins." The hunters poured from the trees, their human disguises gone. Their metallic forms glistened, red eyes burning. They moved fast, surrounding the clearing. David stepped forward, axe in hand. Kyle's fists blazed with white light, brighter than ever before. Lyra's voice hummed with a low, steady power, the air trembling at her breath. The first wave attacked. David swung his axe with the fury of a lifetime of loneliness, each strike landing true. Kale unleashed blasts that cut through the hunters, light exploding across the clearing. Lyra's words rang like music, shaking the ground and pushing enemies back as if the forest itself obeyed her. But for every hunter they struck down, more appeared. The sky rained fire as ships above fired beams into the forest, tearing the ground apart. Trees fell, flames spread, and the night became a battlefield. Kale panted, sweat dripping down his face. "There's too many." "Then we fight harder," David growled, pulling him back from a blade that nearly struck. Lyra's voice rose higher, her song bending into a scream. The hunters froze mid-step, their forms trembling, their red eyes flickering. For a moment, the battlefield fell silent. Sarath raised his staff high. "Now, heirs of the throne, show them who you are." Kale felt the fire inside him ignite. His hands burned so brightly it hurt to look at them. With a roar, he unleashed a beam of light into the sky, striking one of the massive ships. The ship exploded, breaking apart in a storm of sparks. Lyra's voice followed, a note pure and strong. The flames around them bent away, the hunters staggered, and even the earth cracked under her command. The hunters faltered. For the first time, fear shone in their red eyes, but the cost was heavy. David was struck by a blast thrown against the ground. He coughed, blood on his lips, but forced himself back up. Kale rushed to his side, light still sparking around his hands. "Stay back," David shouted, pushing him away. "This fight is yours, not mine. Show them you are more than prey. Show them you are rulers." Kale's heart broke, but he obeyed. He stood tall beside his sister, their silver eyes blazing like stars. Together, they unleashed their power. Kale's light and Lyra's voice merged, a storm of energy that shook the night. The hunters were consumed, their forms torn apart, their ships fleeing into the sky. The clearing glowed as if a sun had risen from the earth itself. When the light faded, silence fell. The hunters were gone. The forest smoldered, the ground cracked, but the twins still stood. They turned to David, who leaned weakly on his axe. His face was pale, but his eyes shone with pride. "You did it," he whispered. "You're not just heirs of some throne. You're warriors. You're my children." Lyra knelt beside him, tears streaming. "We can't leave you," David smiled faintly. "You must. The universe knows you now. If you stay, more will come. But if you go, you can build something greater. Something better." Kale's voice broke. "We'll come back for you. I promise." David placed a hand on his shoulder. "No matter where you go, no matter what you become, remember the earth that raised you. Remember the man who called you his children." Sarath bowed deeply to David. "You have given the galaxy its future. Your name will not be forgotten." With heavy hearts, the twins boarded Sarath's ship. The door closed and the vessel rose into the sky. David watched, his hand pressed to the axe, his face lit by the glow of the engines. The ship vanished into the stars, leaving only silence. David stood alone again in the clearing. The forest burned around him. But his heart was no longer empty. He had raised 2 children who would change the fate of worlds. Above, the stars seemed brighter. Somewhere out there, Kale and Lyra were no longer poor, lost orphans. They were royal heirs. They were rulers to be. And though they carried the destiny of their people, they would always carry something more. The spirit of Earth, the courage of humanity, and the love of the man who had made them his own.